Do you ever wonder why is it that Kodak didn't see the digital camera coming? Or for that matter, why is it that Nokia couldn't anticipate the advent of the smartphone, especially when both events were apparently so obvious? How could Kodak and Nokia have missed reading the writing on the wall? Some folks might think that if they were in Nokia or Kodak back then, they would have seen the issue coming and stopped it. Feeling this way now, after knowing the outcomes, and believing they could have predicted trends and avoided the problems, is actually an example of the hindsight bias. Hindsight bias is when, after knowing what happened in an event like a game, a business decision, or an election, people think they would have predicted the outcome if they were there. The hindsight bias is also known as the I knew it all along phenomenon. This bias can lead people to overestimate their ability to predict the future. After a sporting event, we often think that the winning team played perfectly and the losing team made obvious mistakes. But this is because we know the outcome of the game. In reality, the game was probably much more complex and unpredictable at the time. The same is true for stock market crashes. After the fact, it's easy to say that the market was overvalued and due for a correction. But before the crash, many investors were probably optimistic about the market's prospects. In both cases, hindsight bias leads us to overestimate our ability to predict the outcome of events. This can lead to overconfidence and bad decision making. Here is another way to put it. We tend to think that we could have predicted the outcome of an event even though we couldn't have. This is because we know the outcome now and we forget how uncertain things were before it happened. Hindsight bias is a common cognitive bias that can affect our judgment and decision making. It's important to be aware of this bias so that we can avoid making bad decisions based on our faulty judgments. Let's now look at some more examples of the hindsight bias. People may look back on their own past decisions and actions and see them as more predictable or obvious than they actually were at the time. For instance, someone may say, I knew I should have taken that job offer. I could see that it was the right decision all along, when in reality they were struggling to make a choice at the time. People also may view historical events through the lens of their own beliefs and values and assume that the people who lived through those events should have known better. For example, someone might say, how could people have supported slavery? It's so obviously wrong, without recognizing that the cultural context and prevailing attitudes of the time were very different. Experts suggest that the hindsight bias can lead to several problems and dangers such as overconfidence. People who experience the hindsight bias may become overconfident in the ability to predict and prevent negative outcomes, leading them to take unnecessary risks and make poor decisions. The hindsight bias can also people to unfairly blame others for negative outcomes, assuming that they should have been able to predict and prevent the outcome. When people experience the hindsight bias, they may make inaccurate assessments of past events as they believe that the outcome was predictable and avoidable. This can make it difficult for them to learn from their past mistakes. Overall, the hindsight bias can distort our understanding of past events, leading to overconfidence, unfair blame, unrealistic expectations, and inaccurate assessments.